In the previous lessons, we talked about what a spec table is. The spec table was the minimum requirements given by owner during the preliminary design phase. I have now tabled these minimum requirements. The LOA of the bot, its maximum length. I added the distance between LBP, FPIC and 4PIC, its maximum width and max depth here. These were the main dimensions that we determined since we started designing this bot. At the bottom, we determined the maximum draft and minimum draft values in the previous lesson. We also determined maximum displacement and minimum displacement values according to the draft values. It was decided, while the bot has a draft of 4 meters, the displacement value of the bot is determined as 1864 tons. At the minimum draft, 3.5 meters, its displacement value was determined as 1500 tons. In addition to this, the capacities of the all tanks are must indicate in the spec table for bots. In other words, the capacities of the tanks of the bot are given to the design office by the owner. How are these capacities determined? You will put a diesel tank inside the bot. But how do you determine how many cubic meters it will be? If we know the bot's resistance, we can determine the main engine accordingly. While if I can determine how powerful a main engine it needs, I can know how much fuel this main engine burns per nautical mile. If I know how much fuel the main engine burns in 1 nautical mile, if I want the boat to go how many miles without refueling, I can add a diesel tank of the capacity. The diesel value here, or the values of all tanks, will show the minimum tank capacities. It cannot be less than the values here, but it can be more than the values here. For example, we will calculate the diesel tank in their resistance module. We will calculate how much diesel tank we will put on the boat. We will calculate clean and dirty oil tanks. We will calculate all tanks one by one. For example, we have to put a 50 cubic meter diesel tank on the boat. I cannot put diesel tank below 50 cubic meters. But I can put a diesel tank capacity above 50 cubic meters. As I said, we will calculate them one by one after determining the main engine in the resistance module section. Our capacities will be determined in spec and we will definitely not fall below these values. To talk about these tanks, the diesel tank provided transportation of the boat. The fuel tank. Clean oil tank, if your main machine is certain, the amount of oil that the main engine will consume is more or less certain. These are already specified among the values or properties of the main engine. At the same time, you should put a dirty oil tank to match meet the amount of clean oil. In other words, if you put 10 cubic meters of clean oil, dirty oil tank should not be less than 10 cubic meters. When this oil gets dirty, you have to store it somewhere. Freshwater tank, according to the crew number, if the boat will sail for many miles at a time, freshwater tank is placed in it to meet that capacity. We will also calculate this too. The black water tank is the tank where the toilet water is stored. The amount of black water created by a single person per day is more or less certain. We will add its capacity in cubic meters here according to the number of crew. The grey water tank is the tank where bathroom and kitchen water are stored. It's clear how much grey water a person creates in a day. We will add its capacity in cubic meters here according to the number of crew too. At the bottom, sewage holding tank. Sewage holding tank is the tank where the wastes from black water or grey water tanks are treated and stored. You can purify the dirty water by putting the necessary equipment in the boat. So why do we do this purification process? Of course we do this in order to discharge wastes of the black water and grey water tanks into the sea. For example, black water tank. Wastewater came out of the black water tank. After the wastewater comes out, it's exposed to a number of processes. What are these transactions? The first step in cleaning wastewater is to use physical treatment, namely purification method. Always is filled in a tank. It can also be a small tank that is added later. The large pieces in the waste inside are cleaned here by the purification method. Now the first stage is completed and the second stage is starting. Biological method. By pumping oxygen into the tank, the bacteria inside, namely the bacteria in the dirty water, are suspended or purified. In this way, you clean the dirty water biologically. Then the wastewater proceeds from here, and finally the chemical treatment process is started. In the chemical treatment process, by adding chlorine or chlorine compounds to the dirty water. Dirty water is cleaned and then stored sewage holding. After that, you can now press dirty water into the sea. We cannot press the black water and grey water tanks directly into the sea without physical, chemical and biological treatment. After subjecting it to some cleaning process, we can send it to the sewage holding tank and from there we can press it into the sea. As for the discharge of dirty water into the sea, many European countries don't allow the discharge of dirty water within their borders. But globally, if you are 12 miles from land, you can dump the sewage tank into the sea. These are the rules determined according to the Marple Maritime Contract. Bilge tank is a dirty water and oil tank. It is the tank where the oil or dirty water leaking from the main machine or auxiliary machines is stored. The next tank I haven't added here will be the high fog tank. It's spelled high fog. This tank is the tank that stores the water to be used to extinguish the fire in case of any fire on the boat. We will also calculate and add the high fog tank, or we don't need to write it separately, because there is a fresh water in the high fog tank. We will add the high fog value to the total fresh water volume, so you can add here or not, it's up to you. Since I didn't write and I don't add, I delete this place. I've explained everything in the Spect Table for now. While describing the resistance module, we will first determine the main engine. Then we will calculate the capacities for all tanks. That's it for this lesson. See you in the next lesson.